Josh and Frankie. What a couple of dumb shits.
The strongest musical thread to bond the classic Primus lineup of Lessler and Herb undoubtedly was Rush. From the YYZ opening of their first release, Suck on This, to the Tribute to Kings tours, 30 years later, the band shared their unabashed admiration for Rush, toured with them twice in the 90s, became fast friends, and even shared the stage with Alex and Getty for a performance of Closer to the Heart in 2022. I was there! But I don't have all the Rush knowledge that one needs to talk Rush, Frankie. So we have with us today a man of power. He co-hosts the Something for Nothing podcast, which is all about Rush, which is why he is here today. Jerry Schramm, welcome to Primus Tracks.
Thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here.
We need you today. Now, I'll tell you, I'm a casual Rush fan. Have most of the records, have listened through almost all the albums at this point, and I'm a fan, but I also understand the difference between being a casual fan and a deep fan, as you certainly must as well, being in the Rushverse. And I wanted to ask you about Something for Nothing, actually, your Rush podcast. What was your path to Rush and even Primus as well?
I would call myself a fan. And then, there's fanatics. People know fan comes from fanatics, which is something I found out when we started doing the podcast. I thought among the people I know, I'm the biggest Rush fan in the world, pale in comparison to some people who were very, 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 very into Rush. My first Rush experience, believe it or not, was just seeing them in concert. Like, I guess I had heard Tom Sawyer maybe around something on classic rock radio stations, maybe at somebody's house. It never really struck me. But then one day, my friend Steve, who I co-host with, and a couple other people that we knew in high school, had an extra ticket to a show. I had the only driver's license in the group, so they pretended like they wanted me to go, I think is what happened. They were like, "Oh, Jerry, we have an extra ticket. You should come with us." So I drove them, and it was Rush on the Power Windows tour. And it's not a lie to say that it was one of the best experiences of my life. Just from the first second, again, I had never really heard Rush, never listened to Rush with any kind of intensity whatsoever. But from that moment on, my entire personality was Rush. The second I saw them, that entire concert was the best thing from beginning to end. I had never heard anything like it. And I went in there not knowing anything. And like midway through, I'm like, I must know everything about this band. And then we drove around, like that night, we drove around for a couple of hours listening to like Exit Stage Left, I think is the tape we had in the car. And then at least for the next like 5 years, I was insufferable, I think. I was insufferably Rush all the time.
I am laughing mostly because if you substitute the word Primus in for Rush, it's my experience, more or less. So that sounded quite familiar.
High school trying to put on Rush.
When was the Power Windows tour?
1986, I saw them.
Okay, so this tracks, given that your first Something for Nothing episodes are about the record Power Windows, then.
Right. We decided to go kind of like on vibes when we were doing the record. We didn't want to do like records in a row because we figured people might just skip a week if they knew the next one was coming up, if they didn't like the album.
Yeah.
That's how it worked out, but that's what we thought. And we also wanted to start it where we started. So we started with Power Windows, and then Hold Your Fire, I think was the next one. So we started with those two because Hold Your Fire was the first Rush album that came out when we were fans.
Absolutely. That makes perfect sense to me. We went with the vanilla and cheesy chronological order, but it seems to have worked out. When did you guys start Something for Nothing?
We started in 2019, September of 2019. We got the idea because the two of us, Steve and I, went to Red Rocks to see. We always wanted to go to Red Rocks.
Yeah.
Never been there. We went to see Death Cab for Cutie. Before the show, like the day before the show, whatever, we were driving around. We drove to Utah. We were just talking about podcasts because we both love podcasts. He's more of a sports kind of podcast. I'm more of like a general interest music. He listens to the music podcast too, but his big thing is sports, and my big thing is general interest for the most part. So we were just talking about the podcasts that we like and why we like them. It's usually two people talking unscripted about a thing, a topic.
Yeah.
A specific topic, as opposed to like, I don't know, people getting together and talking about their favorite TV shows or whatever. We wanted to be like on topic all the time. And we were listening, of course, to Rush, and a Rush song came up called Kid Gloves.
Mm-hmm.
And we were talking about Kid Gloves. And I asked Steve, I said, do you know what kid gloves are? And he had never heard the phrase kid gloves before.
Ah, okay.
Explaining to him what kid gloves meant. And then I started, being all nerdy about, well, in the song, the kid gloves, blah, blah. And it was like, that Seinfeld moment, like this is the podcast. I could talk about this. Like we could talk about Rush. There's so much to talk about.
Yeah.
And then, usually we have ideas. Everyone has ideas that are great in the moment. I guess when you sober up, they're no longer great. But this time we were like, this is actually a pretty good idea, and it's something we're interested in. And so we just started doing it.
Oh, right on. It looks like it's doing fantastic. And you guys are still going.
We're still going. We stopped putting out weekly episodes because we just didn't want to, have to. Everything progressed so quickly and naturally, from just talking about episodes to talking to people that were involved in the band, and we got to meet so many cool people and talk to so many cool people. And then at some point we were like, well, we can keep doing this, but we've run out of albums to talk about. And even like the live albums, people always like to hear Steve and I talk about Rush. And it's great to talk to other people about Rush, but like the core of the show is Steve and I talking about Rush. So we just decided to, stop the weekly thing, and we jump in every year for like little mini seasons, maybe 4 or 5 episodes here and there. So we stopped at episode 175, and we're up to now 196.
Jerry, listening to you talk about the Rush podcast, it reminded me of some of our listeners who tell us that, once a year they run through our entire catalog. They go back to episode 1 and they listen to our episodes all the way through. And it makes you realize, how you started this as a hobby, but it actually becomes important for some people. And I think that drives you to keep going and to keep making good quality episodes.
Oh, absolutely. We have the same experience. We have a dedicated number of people who say that they just listen straight through and then start at the beginning again, which I think is incredible. I'm so honored and slightly embarrassed that someone would want to listen to me.
Yes.
Many times.
Yes. Disturbed is the word I use to describe my feelings on the topic.
But it's so humbling too that again, like you guys, this is something we were doing for us for fun, and it kind of blew up into a thing that is a part of people's lives. And just like the podcast I listen to, I love the dynamics between the people of the podcasts I listen to, and that same thing. I'm sure you're getting the same things from your listeners as well. They have that parasocial relationship with you that you kind of have with other people. I find it very gratifying. A couple of times we've gone to Toronto to be at the Rush Day at this Henderson Brewery. They make Rush beer.
Yeah.
So we recorded live episodes from the brewery. And we have people come up to us and are just like, I'm so glad to meet you. I've listened to you guys for years, and it's just so satisfying and interesting.
So that's the gratifying portion of it for sure. I love that. So you mentioned Power Windows tour was your first experience. I can throw out a couple other first experiences. First, I have to admit to you that I never got to see Rush as a three-piece live. I was denied by my dad in 1994, unfortunately. And then I had another chance in 2010, and it just didn't work out, the timing. And that was that, and I'm still kicking myself. But a couple other Rush experiences. In November 1978, a young Les Claypool goes to the Cow Palace to see Rush on the Hemispheres tour, which is a well-known story at this point because he tells it quite a lot. He drinks the 3 warm beers in the parking lot, throws up. He buys a scalp ticket, even though there were tickets available at the box office. The show blows his mind, of course. Pat Travers' band opens and blew open a whole new world for him, and he's worshiping Geddy Lee from that moment on. And of course, he's arguing Geddy's superiority with friends. Somebody finally says to him, Geddy's awesome, but you got to check out Stanley Clarke, Larry Graham, and these other guys. And that's when those influences on him really start to coalesce and brew, I suppose, in his subconscious, and then Les, becomes the bass player that he does. But it really starts, I think, with Geddy Lee. We should also mention that Geddy has mentioned that Les influenced him, of course, years down the line, to a degree. And another Rush story for you, Jerry, is that in June 1981, a young Larry Lalonde is invited to see Rush perform at the Oakland Coliseum on the Moving Pictures tour. And as Larry tells it, he'd never been to a concert. He didn't know what a Rush was. He sees the opening band and he goes, that was cool. And then the next band comes out, which is Rush, and blows him away. And he said, wow, okay, guitars are cool. Rush is great. Excuse me. And then the next week he got to go see Van Halen. So what a double header to start his his journey into the rock world. But these two guys have this bond without even knowing each other, that their first big rock show is Rush on these two huge tours. And with your knowledge of those tours, these guys would have been exposed to just some of the best of Rush, I imagine.
Yeah, especially, Hemispheres era Rush. Holy moly. That would have been, that's like, if I could go back in time and see a tour, it would probably be the Hemispheres tour. Somewhere around there. So Hemispheres is such an incredible album. And then you just get, the majority of the set list is going to be everything before Hemispheres, right? So it's obviously 2112 and Farewell to Kings Under. It's just amazing. I'm very jealous that he got to see that. I hope he wasn't too drunk on those warm beers.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good. He got some of it out of his system, but
Yeah.
I couldn't imagine that being your first concert. It would definitely scramble your brain a little bit, I think.
Were they doing big theatrical productions with Hemispheres and Moving Pictures too? I must confess, I have not gone down that part of the Rush rabbit hole with their stage presentation.
No, they always had pretty cool lighting, but the technology wasn't there yet.
Yeah.
Like Moving Pictures, and if you've ever seen the video of Exit Stage Left, they've got like a video screen behind them that they play some things on. But certainly nothing like they would do later on, where they had screens showing different things and the greatest lighting in the world. We interviewed, their lighting director, Howard Ungerleider, a couple times, and he told us some great things. And because the band is into, an experience for the audience, very much into their fans, obviously. And back then, I'm sure they were doing the best they could. There's probably a lot of dry ice.
Jerry, I'm curious how you feel about the Rush Deluxe reissue box sets.
Well, it depends on the box set. I think the Moving Pictures one is great because it has an extra.
Because it has a little car inside, right? The red Barchetta.
Car inside.
Yeah.
The little red Barchetta. But it also has another full live set from that tour, which is great. Like the Exit Stage Left is a great live album, but it's like cut up into individual songs. It's not like the whole, like the first live album is, you know, presented straight through as like a concert. This one is like the songs end. There's spaces in between the songs like a regular album. But the Live in YYZ, it's called. It's fantastic from beginning to end. But the other ones, I mean, they're packed full of good stuff. I like a good, great sounding live album. I'm not into bootlegs because I can never take the sound, you know, unless it's a really good, and even some, you know, soundboard recordings, they're good for bootlegs, but, you know, I want something that was actually recorded, you know, by people who record for a living.
I think that's one thing that Rush is of that era when live albums were much more common. And it seemed like they took advantage of the concept and the idea, because the ones I've heard, like Exit Stage Left, and certainly Rush and Rio, just sound huge. Rush and Rio, I think, is buoyed by the 300,000 people that are constantly screaming the entire time. That's what struck me when I first put that on, is the crowd is...
Rush and Rio is unbelievable, because of people actually singing along to an instrumental.
Yeah.
Along the YYZ. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And we talked to the guy who produced that, Daniel Catullo, and he told us that it was like the most insane experience ever. He'd done a lot of concert videos, and it was, you couldn't believe the noise. You couldn't believe I mean, if you watch the video, it wasn't shot in HD. They didn't have a chance to get HD, so it's, you know, SD. So the quality isn't that good. But if you'll notice, and sometimes when they're showing shots from behind the band, the camera is shaking because it was just so much noise. They couldn't believe it, and they had never experienced the kind of soccer stadium mentality with the chants and stuff like that. So you know, how they even heard themselves, even with in-ears, beyond me.
And I'm going down this live album track because, of course, the first Primus release is a live record, and the first notes of it are YYZ. So there's, I don't know if that was a part of the decision-making process for Primus, but they knew they had a following, and they had a pretty rabid fan base in the Bay Area, and that, you know, the crowd on Suck on This is quite loud as well. Of course, it's only a few hundred people as opposed to something like Exit Stage Left, which is taken from arena shows, I imagine. But just that idea that they're opening with a Rush lick, you know, on a live album really kind of takes you back in time. At least for me, takes me back in time to this era when live albums were prevalent and meaningful, because you got to, in a sense, experience the show without being there. You know, I don't know if the era of YouTube and high quality recordings cheapens that, because I can just, you know, sit here and dial up 25 shows and watch them all in a row. But I think I have a soft spot for those live albums from bands in the 70s and 80s and 90s that were putting them out.
Yeah, I agree that it definitely, you know, from our perspective, at least from my perspective, growing up with just the live albums, I think it does cheapen the experience. But to someone who's never had the previous experience, it doesn't cheapen anything. There's nothing to cheapen, right? There's no comparison.
For sure.
Cheaper than the other. And I do find live videos all the time, but you know, it's like anything, that the constant availability of them kind of diminishes the specialness of it.
That's a fair point. Well, so when Lessler and Herb get together in early 1989, they find that Rush is the band that they have most in common. And so they're jamming on a bunch of Rush stuff. And Les has said they weren't playing full songs. They just knew bits and pieces. And so they're playing little pieces here and there. Certainly they were playing YYZ. Without a doubt, they were playing Cygnus and a couple others. And they found that Rush was what bonded them. And so it makes perfect sense that YYZ is the first notes, you know, on Suck on This. And it's pretty clever to attach it to a track like John the Fisherman. And I wanted to move into some musical generalities that Primus seems to have borrowed or otherwise sublimated, I suppose, from Rush, because all three of these guys were heavily influenced by them. And I just wrote a short list that I observed from, really focusing in on 70s and early 80s Rush, which is what these guys would have been listening to ad nauseum. In those records, there's a lot of staccato stop starts, and that's a Primus hallmark. The stop start, what percentage of Primus songs have that, Frankie? 72?
89%.
89%. I knew he would have the number. So it's a high number. A lot of use of silence and space in those general aesthetics, because Lura's always talked about, finding the space, and he's weaving through. Les and Tim take up a lot of space on record, and Larry's kind of wiggling through those spaces. It's a bit different from as far as Rush goes, but just the big sound of a power trio, of course, is the obvious thing that they have in common. But that interlocking bass and drum for complex grooves that Les and Tim established is straight out of what Geddy and Neil were doing for years. Those guys, I had the first Rush album I got was actually the Chronicles compilation, and that first disc just blew me away when I was 15. Like you can tell where Primus got a lot of the Rush stuff. It's not in the soaring melodies and the lyricism. It's certainly in these percussive grooves and where the bass and drums are locking up and Neil's just ripping. And I'm curious about your observations in that regard.
Well, yeah, it's definitely foundational as opposed to, something that's more apparent, I think. I've obviously can hear the influence, but to me, Primus is such a unique band. I don't think there's another band that's like Primus. There's a lot of bands that, like Rush is a unique band, but you can draw a semi-straight line from Rush to their influences. But I feel like for Primus, like most bands, it's a salad, right? With Primus, and it's a smelting pot. Like they're so unique and they're so strange, as I'm sure you guys know. I don't know how you can draw a line sometimes from one to the other than, they were a three-piece. So obviously they're, they were influenced at least by Rush for that, maybe by Cream as well. But, and like you said, like there's some great, especially like the instrumental parts in these instrumentals. There's parts in the instrumentals like YYZ or La Villa Strangiato, which is Geddy and Alex. I mean, just Geddy and Neil, and you can hear that kind of relationship in Primus. But Primus, I don't even know. They're so back in the 90s, I don't even know if it's still around. There was a newspaper called the Aquarian Weekly. It was on the East Coast. I'm not sure how big
I'm not familiar. Yeah.
It was big in New Jersey. It was a free weekly music newspaper that I would read all the time. And I think it was when Sailing the Seas of Cheese came out, they described Primus as the house band in an insane asylum. Which I thought was the best and still is the best description of them.
Pretty good.
So yeah, I definitely see, the inspiration from Rush, but picking it out, I mean, I don't know, they're like from another planet.
Yeah. I think you're pointing to something important, which is we have to go to the atomic level because it's been melted down so much, because the influences are wide ranging. Of course, Les had a really strong funk and R&B and soul background from gigging around the Bay with bands like the Tommy Crank Band. Tim was in the world beat scene for some time, and Larry was in Possessed, for crying out loud, one of the first pioneers of death metal. So they're from disparate backgrounds, but the one thing they really had in common was Rush. And so you would, if you really drilled down, you can get there. And we've talked about the XTC influence on Primus, which is certainly not readily apparent in the music, and the Talking Heads influence on Primus, which is readily apparent in the demos, but certainly not in the studio releases. I would recommend to you, Jerry, to go listen to some of those Primus demos that are on YouTube. They are fascinating. Because they're just so different from what came later. So with the Rush thing, I'm going to play a few clips of some Primus tunes that sound like they have a Rush influence in certain parts. Maybe there's a direct line there for 32 seconds, but right. it could just be Rush-like, as opposed to let's write a Rush song.
Right, exactly. I mean, if you listen to like Billy Corgan, he's talked about like actually lifting like things from Rush. He's like, I think I recently saw a little interview where he said the beginning of Cherub Rock is Bytor and the Snow Dog, like the breakdown of Bytor and the Snow Dog. I don't know how familiar you are with that. But if you listen to two of them, you're like, oh, I get it now. Like you wouldn't hear it at first, but once you point it out, you're like, yeah, okay, I could see that. I don't even see that a lot of times with Primus, other than like what they're doing, like you said, like Rush-like things. Stopping and starting, the cool interplay. But I do think that one major influence on Les, and it's hard to say that they're exactly the same in this way, but it was definitely Neil and lyrically, because Primus songs are almost always about something, right?
Yeah.
They're very abstract. But if you listen to them, they're about something. They're about a topic, or, maybe just a story, a song. They're not, I don't know, there's a lot of generic type of songs. I don't think there's a single generic Primus lyric where, it's like, oh, I guess he tossed that off. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He was looking for a rhyme. That's why he put that. They're all so weird, and they're all so abstract. Like something like, my Primus, knowledge of like every single song kind of stops at the Brown album. That was up to then. I've dipped in here and then over the years, but I never was into them as much as I was in those first few albums. But if you listen to a song like Too Much Puppies,
Too Many Puppies, sure.
I mean, you're just like, oh, if you listen, you might think this is a song about puppies. It's like, I don't think it's a song about puppies. This is definitely not a song about puppies. This is some weighty, like, anti-war stuff, right? And that's kind of what Neil did. His songs were a little more direct. All Rush songs are about something. Right. They have an actual. You could talk about just about every Rush song for a while, and just lyrically, and say, this is the song. This is breaking down. This is refers to. This is what it means. And Les does the same thing when he's writing lyrics.
Yeah. I dismissed the lyricism earlier, and I should reconsider that in the sense that, along your lines, which is that Les is telling stories as well as Neil was telling stories, but certainly of a different bent. Neil, much more literary, and in his lyrics, there's a lot more lofty ideas. As I kind of mentally catalog a lot of those 70s and 80s tunes that I'm more familiar with myself. Les has said that he has a few tunes where he was reaching for something like that, trying to be clever, I think were his words. Quite often in Primus lyrics, past, say, Sailing the Seas of Cheese, beyond those records, Pork Soda onwards, it's a lot of stories of people he knows or has heard about who went down a dark path. So there's a lot of cautionary tales. So they're much more, even though they're like way out there with wacky characters, there is an underlying theme and something to be mined from it. Yeah. Whereas Rush just presents things with such grandeur, with these concept albums and the instrumentation, that the lyrics almost take on a more weight to me. That's certainly a contrast between the two bands, where I wonder if the instrumentation for Primus might lead people to either be distracted by the instrumentation and not listen to the lyrics, or already turned off by the instrumentation and aren't going to process. I'm not sure.
I think that happens a lot. Yeah. I mean, they are as polarizing, if not more, than Rush. I think.
Yeah.
Music, because I put on many a Rush tune over the years, various parties, especially when I was younger. Never a good response. Never.
Oh, I'm curious about that because there's certainly, yes, I have tried to turn plenty of people onto Primus and they go, the guy's voice is annoying. What the hell are they doing musically? This makes no sense. This is annoying. Turn it down. I'm curious, what's the reaction when you were introducing people to Rush?
The same thing. Nobody in high school wanted to listen to Beneath, Between, Behind. You know what I mean? It was just not happening. Nobody at a party wants to hear Bastille Day. It's just not happening. You know, a bunch of 17-year-olds. I was really into it. They're not going to listen to, you know, By Tor and the Snow Dog or Jacob's Ladder. They were not. Nobody's like, this song is about a thunderstorm. You don't understand. It's just not. Didn't go over well.
Yeah, it's hard. I would imagine it's hard to do keg stands to that kind of thing.
It is, yeah.
Eddie Money is a lot easier.
Very much easier. Yeah, it goes down smoother, like a good PBR or something.
There's another commonality, which is we should certainly harp on, which is both these bands. I think Rush is much more widely accepted now. I mean, they've got so many classic rock radio staples at this point, but I'm sure at the time it was, you know, when you're referring to this in the mid 80s, it was probably a bit harder to turn people onto them. I think at this point there's much more mainstream acceptance. And I think Primus to a degree too, but it's probably a harder sell.
I think Primus is still a harder sell, yeah. I think with Rush, a lot of people like in the orbit of Rush fans just got worn down. You know what I mean? They were just like, okay, I'll listen to it. And once you listen to it, you realize it's not, you know, it's not what you thought it was. It's very thoughtful, can be loud. Some songs are soft, you know, they get into the keyboard era and they get to like the early 90s. The guitars toned down a little bit. And it's just, you know, the songs become more songy. They become more like songs that you can be like, oh, okay, this is like a 4-minute song. I can listen to this song. And over the years, you know, that's like they say, what do they say about Rush? Is that they're the biggest cult band in the world. And they just, people, I think, really just put aside their prejudices about what they've heard about the band and actually listen to it. And I feel like the same thing with Primus. Primus, though, is a little more in your face. I think some people just can't handle something being in their face like that.
I think it's a gentler transition to accept Rush than the alternative there. I think, because to me, of course, the first notes I heard of Primus, I went, yes. I immediately identified. And if you don't have that experience, it's going to be pretty challenging, I think, to get into it.
Right.
Yeah.
There are some Rush songs that you can say to somebody who might come up to you. I don't know when this would ever happen. Come up to you and be like, I want to get into Rush. What should I listen to? And you'd be like, okay, listen to this song. Because this is like, it's a clean kind of song. It's about a thing that you can understand right off the bat. The lyrics, you know, it's relatively short. You're not going to send somebody to Hemispheres or A Farewell to Kings. They listen to Xanadu, which is like, you know, 9 minutes long or whatever. But Primus, are there any Primus tunes that you can say to somebody who's like, oh, I always wonder about Primus. What should I listen to? And be like this confidently that this song is going to turn them into Primus fans?
I always direct people to a live performance of Tommy the Cat on Bonnaroo 2011. If they can enjoy that, I think then the doors are wide open.
Mm-hmm. This is the reason I've been listening to your podcast, and Frankie, your knowledge.
Thank you.
Knowledge of individual dates is so impressive. I can't even remember. I have so many notes on my phone to do things for today. Never mind. Remember the dates of individual things, individual concerts. That's amazing.
I'm glad you asked that question because I had a similar question for you. But gosh, yeah, I often point listeners. I often point potential Primus listeners to Jerry Was a Race Car Driver because that is it's fairly well known, and I'd say this is pretty emblematic of the band right here. And so if you can enjoy this, you'll probably get the rest of it. I wanted to ask you, Jerry, where would the Primus fan who has not gotten into Rush yet, where would you start them?
Where would I start them? I think they'd have to definitely start in the 70s. And I might I would start them with either Hemispheres or Farewell to Kings.
And Farewell to Kings is pretty convenient because many Primus fans have already seen the band perform that live in its entirety.
Sure. I went to 2 shows on that tour to see them.
Yeah, so if you were going to start a Primus fan who is not into Rush with Farewell to Kings or Hemispheres, how then would you describe or rate the performances of Farewell to Kings in your estimation, being a Rush fan, borderline fanatic?
They were really good. The thing is that Les's voice is so unique, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like Geddy, those songs Geddy was really in his upper register back then.
Yeah.
Les did a good job of trying to capture that kind of thing. He was almost kind of singing less like himself. Does that make sense? He was trying to be less like and more Geddy like.
Yeah, I think he kind of flattened his voice out a bit. He wasn't doing the "I'm right up here on the nasal." He was doing more of a lower register thing. He wasn't getting up into the stratosphere, but he was certainly playing it straight.
Yeah, he was less like the ShamWow guy, right? More trying to like singing like I guess a normal person. I mean that as a compliment.
Yeah,
but it was fantastic. I mean, I saw it twice. I thought it was an odd choice, though. Personally, I don't really know exactly why they chose a Farewell to Kings of all the Rush albums to do. Do you know why they chose?
What I recall is Les said 2112 would have been too obvious, and Hemispheres presented its own unique set of challenges.
Oh yes, and they said they couldn't do one song without the other, right? Because Cygnus would be missing.
That was the other thing. Yeah, they figured we should do Cygnus 1 first. If we can't start with Cygnus 2, which that could be a cop out. Who knows?
But if there's any Rush song that sounds like a Primus song, it's Cygnus X1.
Oh
yes,
without question, yes.
And that was in the works for quite a while, actually.
Yeah.
They began teasing Cygnus since their 2019 tour that they did opening for Slayer. So that's when they first began playing the intro of Cygnus. Yeah. And I think that paved the way for the full-length tour later on. But prior to that, I mean, there are several instances, not just teases. Josh mentioned YYZ on Suck on This. But back in 2003 and 2004, every now and then they would do a full YY set and a full Villa Strangiato during those years. And it was really incredible. It was really amazing. And of course, you know that Les also performed at... What ceremony was that? Was that a Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, I think?
Canadian Songwriters Hall of Fame?
Yes, Canadian Songwriters.
Oh, yeah, that one, yes.
Right. In the pig masks, I think they were wearing, right?
Oh, yeah.
That was the fungi era.
Fungi band, so they were wearing those freaky, wrinkly face masks. Yes, and of course Les didn't have to wear one. Those performances are quite telling, I think, of their influences. But Cygnus, they're teasing it in 2019 because I think the plan was to tour Tribute to Kings in 2020. Exactly. We know how that went. But the other thing is, I love the balls to tease Rush to a Slayer audience.
Right.
They'd get up there every night because they were playing right before Slayer, and Les would say on the microphone, "We're Primus. We're going to do our thing. If you're not into it, I recommend going to buy your Slayer t-shirt right now." And then they would just play their Primus set and leave.
The reason why I thought it was an odd choice is because the Farewell to Kings, I think, is a bizarre Rush album to begin with.
Oh, interesting.
2112, which has that bombastic opening.
Yeah.
And it's just like the heaviest, kind of very dark album. And then the song, A Farewell to Kings, starts with Alex. It was literally recorded outside and like the bird sounds that you hear at the beginning of that song are actual birds.
Oh, that's field recording. Cool.
Yeah. And he was like walking in a circle, I think, around a microphone playing the intro to A Farewell to Kings, that acoustic intro, which is as emblematic of who Rush are as a band as anything, because they came off this bombastic thing, which a record company didn't even want them to do.
Oh, wow.
They were just like, we're going to do it anyway, because if we're going to be dropped, we're going to be dropped, and this is what we want to do. And then the record company's like, oh my God, this was a smash hit. Give us more. And then it's like, ding, ding, ding. It's just like, what? The record company must have been like, what is the deal with you guys?
That's another commonality, is that both these bands, of course, forged their own path. Record companies be damned. And that is really important to note, because Primus has always self-produced. They didn't go with a producer. Now, their first couple of albums they did with Matt Weiniger, a friend of theirs who's an incredible producer, Grammy-winning producer at this point. And then after that, they self-produced until Interscope Records said, maybe we need somebody in the room with you. And that is after the Brown album, as you can imagine, Jerry. But just having that, just doing the opposite of what the record company wants with A Farewell to Kings is, that really resonates with me. And I think that's part of the spirit of these two bands. And I think that's why they became really good friends, too. They just have that similar irreverence, I think.
Yeah, I mean, they have an artistic vision, and nobody's going to get in the way of it. You know, like, no is a full sentence, right? People say, the record company's like, you should write more hits or whatever, or try to, you should do this, or you should write more songs like this other band. And they're like, nah.
No, we're just going to do a concept album, even though you don't want us to.
Right. And we're going to start it off with, sketchy keyboard sounds for 30 seconds that somebody's going to turn off and ever hear this album. We're like, what is this? What in my music
awesome.
This?
In my case, Jerry, my approach to Rush was that I remember seeing the Rush in Rio album at the record shops back when I began actively purchasing CDs. And I thought it looked really cool, but I had zero idea about Rush, and I had never heard their music before. Then when I got into Primus, I heard YYZ and La Villa Strangiato through Primus, of course, and I thought they were really amazing songs. But somehow that didn't spark my interest enough. But it was then one day record shopping when I saw the tour crates, those reissues that they released on the individual tour crates. I think they were 3, and you put them together, and then they spell out Rush. Do you know which ones I'm talking about?
No.
There were these little boxes. All the albums were released as cardboard digipacks inside, and the boxes come in the shape of tiny tour crates, and then you put them together, and they spell out Rush. They are 3. So I thought, wow, this is really cool. And then I remember looking at the album covers, the track lists, and I thought, wow, this albums actually look really interesting. So then that pushed me into listening to the Rush discography back to back. And I have to point out that my favorite Rush album is definitely Test for Echo. I don't know how popular that is within the fan base, but it's actually my favorite. And beyond the classics, and the hits, I have to say that some of my favorite Rush tunes are Subdivisions, Kid Globes, Roll the Bones, Where's My Thing, Animate, Stick It Out, Cut to the Chase, Everyday Glory, Leave That Thing Alone. I love that instrumental. Of course, Dog Years and Virtuality, Working Them Angels, The Main Monkey Business, Caravan, Headlong Flight, and The Garden. And not a Rush song, but my favorite Headache from that solo Geddy Lee album. I also love that song. But if I had to pick one, I guess Virtuality is my favorite Rush song. Wow. The lyrics are so incredibly dated, but the music is amazing.
Well, I don't know if there's no video, right? We're not showing video. I don't know if you saw my face.
I saw it.
Test for Echo, and this is at, that phrase, customer is king. You hear that?
Yeah.
My phrase is the customer is king in matters of taste. which means you like what you like. But
Mhm.
among the Rush world, Test for Echo is toward the bottom.
Wow.
Interesting. Yeah. I will say that's the first Rush record I bought because that was, as a solo record, because that was the first album that came out after I got into them. I really liked the first couple of tracks. Virtuality, I think that riff is huge. I love
It's
it.
amazing.
But
And the melody is fantastic.
yeah, but as a whole, coming from like that first disc of Chronicles, which I just played a lot, as a teenager, going from that to Test for Echo was somewhat stupefying to me overall. And so I don't know that it fully landed then, but I think I have a soft spot for it.
Going
Because it was
through the
the first
live
one.
albums, I think Different Stages is my favorite.
That is a good one.
Yeah.
That's a good one. Actually, the first Rush show that I saw, they recorded both nights of that, and when they played, I only saw the one night. But one of the songs from the show I was in is on that live recording.
Oh, fantastic.
Wow.
Both
Can you
these
hear
two-
yourself on it? Is that?
Yeah, I'm the guy going, "What the fuck?" One of the things we like to do, and we've been trying to do, is like catalog everyone's favorite Rush song. Like we wanted to get the definitive list.
Ooh.
We've been talking about it for a while, and we've done forums and asked people to do this thing. When we went to Henderson Brewing this year, we had we gave out pieces of paper where people could write down their top 20 songs and a link if they wanted to do the whole thing. And it is all over the place.
Of course. Yeah.
All over the place. I mean, there are a bunch, 5, 10, 15, 20 that are grouped in the top.
Yeah.
But every once in a while, somebody will throw in something like Dog Ears. It's like,
Yeah.
okay. Like there's no, whatever song there is, it's someone's favorite song.
Wow. It's funny you say Dog Years because I distinctly remember having Test for Echo with me, in my little CD book on a road trip with a bunch of dudes in college, and it was my turn, and I put that in. One of the guys in the car when Dog Years came on said, and I'm quoting verbatim, "This is the worst Rush song I've ever heard."
What? Dog Years is fabulous.
If you want to get into like the nitty gritty of why I think it's because lyrically, for me and for a lot of people, it's just not Neil at his best.
Yeah.
That's really what it boils down to. Like Neil,
yeah,
it's hard. It's hard to be Rush, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Because their top shelf drinks are amazing.
Yeah.
There's so many of them.
I looked at the heat map that you guys had of a sort for the rankings of the songs, and it is all over the place, but there's certainly much more orange and red in those late 70s, early 80s recordings, for sure. So I think you can roughly group them, but it is pretty incredible that the fan base's opinion is scattered as it is.
Scattered all over the place.
Yeah.
And there are very, very few Rush songs that everyone agrees that they don't like. Really.
Oh, very cool.
Like there are some songs that I never listen to and I don't like at all. And one of them is Tai Shan. It's like famously not their best song. It's on Hold Your Fire. And I talk about how much I just dislike the song. I mean, I just don't like it. I mean, it's one song out of 165.
Yeah.
I just don't like it. Leave me alone. That's what I'm saying.
That's a really good hit rate, by the way, if there's only one that you really won't want to listen to.
And I get emails every time I mention it. I get emails. People like, "That's my favorite song. My favorite Rush song." Okay, that's great.
That's excellent.
Jerry, I wanted to ask for your personal perspective about a particular topic, the finality of the discography. For example, with David Bowie and Black Star, fans know that he was intending to record more albums and make more music, and unfortunately he couldn't. But as a final statement, that album, it works. It's the perfect way to end his discography. So with Rush, how do you feel about Clockwork Angels being the bookend of their career?
I've said this many times. I think that Clockwork Angels is the greatest final album of any band. I don't think they were expecting it to be their final album. We talked to the producer, Nick Raskulinecz, and it wasn't, they weren't like, this is our last album. It just happened to be their last album, I think. I think it's fantastic. I think it's top 10 album, Rush album. To think that a band had been around at that time for 40 years or more, had so much gas left in the tank to make an album like that. After all of those albums, it's mind-boggling. I think that album is a classic. And
it is a great record. Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
It doesn't sound like anything else. There's still, even, the old guys, they were in their 60s, I think, when they recorded it, maybe. Late 50s. Still sounds like a brand new band. Like every Rush album, they always tried to sound like a brand new band, I think. And that one really, really, really hits it out of the park. It's fantastic.
I'm glad you mentioned that one because there are a few clips I wanted to play of some Rush tracks, including Seven Cities of Gold. And thanks to you, Jerry, for these suggestions. I wanted to play these for Frankie, but also for our listeners in terms of what we referenced earlier in the influence that Les Claypool had on Geddy Lee. Geddy didn't completely change his playing style, but he certainly started throwing in bits and pieces that sounded, for lack of a better term, Claypoolian in some of their releases.
Or you could say Claytoolesque.
So here's a piece from the Counterparts record. The track is Animate. And those of you listening, close your eyes and listen to the bass for a few seconds. There's a little bit there.
Yeah, it's definitely a little bit there. I mean, Geddy plays weird. Anyway, he plays weird. Like Les plays weird, right? Nobody's playing bass. Les plays bass. Geddy plays bass with like his index finger.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was watching some of those older live performances, and he's slamming it on one or two fingers, but mostly one.
Right. Yeah, he uses it, I guess, like a pick or something like that. He's not really doing what other people do, and it's another similarity between the two of them. They just came up with their own way of playing bass.
Yeah.
And there, I don't know what he's doing there, but that little, he's just throwing in. He's definitely throwing in extra stuff, and it's got that thumpy stuff that Les always does, right?
Yeah, that one really resonated with me, and I thought, oh yeah, I can hear it there for sure. The other one you suggested was Seven Cities of Gold from Clockwork Angels. I'm just going to play the intro because that's what got my attention. I let that go for a few more seconds because Alex is just scraping. That's a Lur thing too. The percussion is starting to take shape. So that sounded like a very Primacy intro to me.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Especially in that bass, of course. That does not sound like a standard Geddy Lee bass line.
Right. It's got a little hiccup in it.
Yes.
A little whatever. There's just somewhere, and there's like
a little thump and pluck, and that's a very Claypool thing. And that pause, that stop start in that little moment.
Did you listen? I sent you that one song, "Driven," the live version of "Driven."
I have that queued.
Oh, great.
And even that main lick for Driven is that tappy thing he's doing is unusual for him, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And that solo thing, like he does that one thing. I'm not a great musician, But he's like diddle and diddle and diddle and diddle. Like there's some kind of note in between. You know, it's just like, where'd that note come from? Like, what is that?
And he's just kind of doing a chromatic thing, same shape down the fretboard, and that sounds very Claypool to me too. So it's certainly similar. I wouldn't say it's a direct influence, but I think that's a product of hanging with Les and asking him, what are you doing there? You know,
at that break before, you know, in the first part where he breaks it, there's a chord at the end, bang.
Yeah,
that's definitely Claypoolian.
Those are fantastic examples, and I'm thankful you sent those along because Counterparts, I listened to the hell out of that like 15 years ago. I remember that was on regular rotation on my little MP3 player in 2010, you know, when I was going to the gym or that sort of thing. And that's the one that really got my attention in terms of Geddy's playing really differently than these records from the 70s.
Well, that was their return to hard rock.
Yeah.
Basically, because the previous albums were, some people think that the production is a little thin on like Roll the Bones and Presto. And Counterparts, you know, it was when grunge was big.
Yeah.
Guitar was back in fashion. And they were just like, let's just kind of like go back to the loudness, basically, that we had before.
Yeah.
So they were plugging in, basically.
Even the cover art too has that grunge aesthetic with the nut and the bolt, and it just looks like it's out of some kind of instructional manual. Looks less developed, right? That's kind of the grunge aesthetic, of course. So it looks less Rush, certainly, given their propensity for really excellent album cover art.
Yeah, I mean the previous two albums before that, Roll the Bones, the wall of dice, and the kid kicking the skull, and the one before that, Presto, just had rabbits on it.
Yeah.
And Counterpart, you know what I mean? Like that, like Counterparts, like you said, it's plain, it's blue, just has these shapes on it. Yeah, it's a little more abstract than, you know, a mountain full of bunnies.
So on the flip side, I want to play a clip from the track "The Antipop" because this, to me, is the most Rush-sounding thing that Primus ever put to tape in the studio. I'm prefacing this with my old buddy Thad Ford, who I worked with in high school. He was the sous chef in the kitchen. I was just a little high schooler who thought he was really cool because during prep time he would play Sepultura and a bunch of metal stuff, and I was like, this guy's awesome. So Antipop comes out, and I say, Thad, it's here. Antipop, I've been telling you all about it. He's like, all right, let's go listen to it. So we go sit in his car for a few minutes, and this is the track I play him. For this intro, he said, oh, this sounds like Rush. What are you hearing there, Jerry?
Oh, I hear those hi-hats.
Yeah, that's Brain.
Neil was like the master of the hi-hat, and that sounds, the hi-hat in that sounds just like it. But also, like you said before, the grandeur, there's a grandeur to that song.
Yeah.
It's very Rush, early Rush. And the fills, too. Is Brain a big Neil fan? That's
not something I'm as clear on. I think he's appreciative of Rush, but he hasn't been outspoken in them being a big influence on him, much as Tim has over the years.
Because I definitely, you hear that little cymbal, right? I don't know, like the size of the
little China cymbal type thing, yeah.
Which Neil, I think, plays in a lot of things, but it's the fills that really sound Rush to me, because Neil was, known for just that cascading all the way down.
Yeah.
While this is a little more staccato, but broken up into parts. Yeah. It's definitely, you can feel it from the tiny drums all the way to the bigger drums.
And they always panned it real nicely on Neil's big fills too, from left to right or right to left, depending. That was always really fun to hear. To me, that's small scale Rush. Primus is doing right there to a degree.
But still, it's like you can hear it, but you can't exactly point it to anything. You know,
Yeah.
it's not like I said before with the opening of Cherub Rock or whatever that song is from Smashing Pumpkins, where you're just like, once you hear it, you're like, oh yeah, that's this particular Rush song. This is just Rush-esque.
Yes.
Right.
To me, this is the most Rush-esque that they've ever put down. I had a couple other ideas, but this is the one I settled on.
It's a secondhand Rush high.
Yeah, right. I'm too lazy to get up, but Antipop is within arm's reach, so I'll put that on if I want to hear some Rush, and their records are on the other side of the room.
Josh, I think it's time that you explain Jerry about the vanilla.
So, yeah, I wanted to move into the Primus Rush relationship because these guys have been friends for years at this point. Of course, touring together on a couple different Rush tour cycles. And they became friends. They had these bizarre backstage jams on which everybody was playing their unschooled instruments, you know, clarinets, accordions, and whatever. And Les tells a story that Neil was banging on some lockers one day and it was the greatest rhythm he ever heard, that kind of thing. Alex is using a tortilla chip for a pick on whatever instrument he's playing. So, and you're probably familiar with those stories. Obviously,
they were recorded. Did you know that?
Yes. Alex said that they were recorded, but those tapes are probably who knows where.
Love to hear them.
And I think in that same interview, Larry was asked what they sounded like, and he said they sound exactly like you'd think, essentially. But
that's the best description of it, because I know exactly how they would sound.
Yeah, and I still want to hear it.
Yeah.
So, you know, these guys have talked about Rush in their interviews and press for years and years and years. Tribute to Kings comes around, and they do that for a while. So Tim leaves the band, and there's this highly publicized search for the next drummer. I don't know if you watched any of the Drum Derby episodes.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
What Frankie has been saying a lot recently when we're messaging back and forth and on the podcast, he's just throwing in the words cheesy and vanilla because Rush is such an influence on Les and Larry, and people know this. Yet in the Drum Derby finale video, where John Hoffman and Gergu Borlai are, you know, in the final stretch and writing a song with the guys and all this stuff, there's also downtime. So they're sitting around talking. Les asks Gergu, he says, "Do you like Rush?" And Gergu says, "I always found them cheesy." And sharp intake of breath. Yes, because anybody watching that who knows did the same thing and said, "Oh, that's not good. No, read the room, man." And then Gergu said, maybe that's, and I'm paraphrasing, and Gergu said something like, maybe that's not the word. Maybe vanilla is the word.
How is that worse?
And now he's just digging deeper, right? And so
yeah.
I don't think it cost him the job, but the reaction of Les and Larry was pretty funny, and you knew that I don't know that they took it as a personal affront, but they were certainly, they had curious reactions.
Wow. That I didn't see that one. I saw the other guy's final performance with them. I don't think I saw that. I would have gasped just like I did.
Yeah.
That's shock. That is shocking.
I mean, and of course, there's plenty of fantastic musicians who haven't heard Rush or don't appreciate it or just don't listen to it. But it certainly was a very direct answer.
Right. And does he know nothing about them? Did he do any research at all about them that would know that you shouldn't disparage Rush in front of them?
I don't know. That's a great question. And then actually after they had that conversation,
I don't think he was that familiar with the catalog, because if you recall, Les mentioned that they wanted to jam on Cygnus, and then Gergo started listening to it on his cell phone, and it looked like he was listening to the song for the first time ever.
Yeah, I think so.
Did they jam on it? Was he able to?
No,
whether they did or not, we don't know. It didn't show up in there, but you know, Les said something like, "If you can come in tomorrow and play Cygnus, I'll be really impressed."
Yeah.
And I actually have no doubt that Gergu could. I just don't know if he bothered.
Right.
So
if you listen to it like no disrespect to Tom Petty, obviously a great guy, but you could listen to a Tom Petty song, like any song, and be like, "Oh, I could probably pick that up, right? I could pick up that drum part. I could learn that drum part." There's no way you're learning Cygnus X1 in 24 hours. There's no way you're learning that song in 24 hours, right? It's that boom, bam, bam, bum, 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 bum. You would never. I don't know. Maybe I don't know anything about drumming, but that sounds crazy to me. Listen to it on the phone to be like, oh, okay, yeah, I can. Let me see if I can learn this song. And listen to it on your phone. Like 3 seconds in, you'd be like, no.
Gugu's a pretty talented guy. I wouldn't put it past him to have a pretty good handle on it in 24 hours. But it was just such a moment in that drum finale that we just keep referencing it because it was just so bizarre. Les is in the big book of basses. He was on Getty's TV show
too, as well.
I mean, Les is on the Alex's Victor album. These guys have been friends forever.
Yeah.
He was on Getty's TV show.
Yeah.
That was fantastic. I actually watched that twice, and I thought it was such a great episode. And one of the reasons that I think is really fantastic is because no matter how long they have known each other and the fact that they have toured together and the fact that, there's a mutual respect for each other, somehow Les still can't help seem like a fan when he's around Getty. And I find that really amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, he always seems to be like
in awe, yeah.
In awe of him, but also like picking at him to try to learn how to play.
Yeah. Yes.
Like, yeah, right?
We watched the Rick Beato interview with Les. He told the story about being in the big book of bass and how he said he would do it if Getty would show him how to play YYZ the correct way.
Right. And
as he tries to play it to Rick Beato, he's like, I can't even play it. I used to play it like this. I can't even play it like the way Getty plays it. So he's still absolutely in awe of Getty.
Yeah, it certainly shows. Yeah. To put a button on this, I would say as far as Primus DNA and the connection to Rush, the subtitle of La Villa Strangiato says it all: an exercise in self-indulgence. And that, I think, is the ultimate connection between Rush and Primus, if you were to try to quantify it musically. That's where I'm landing after our conversation.
Definitely. And the thing I've always loved about Rush is that they do these incredibly complex things and they do indulge themselves creatively, but somehow it always comes out great. Like it never seems self-indulgent. Mm-hmm. It never seems insincere. It never seems like they're doing it to try to do something. You know what I mean?
It's very organic. Yeah.
It's very organic. And I think Primus is the same way. And it's probably the reason why nobody can sound like Primus. Mm-hmm. You just couldn't be those people. That's it. That's like
yes.
Those people. That's the chemical reaction that happens when Les does his thing with other people. That's just the way it comes out. And you cannot mimic that at all.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's true for Rush as well. Many have tried and it's not the same.
This doesn't sound the same.
Yeah. Jerry, thank you so much for joining us today and talking Primus DNA with Rush. I should throw it out there again. Something for Nothing podcast. Everybody needs to go subscribe to that right now. I'm going to probably do a Rush deep dive as a result of this conversation.
I hope so. That's the only reason why we do the podcast. We've gotten so many emails from people who were just like, I stumbled on your podcast and I really wasn't that big of a Rush fan, but I listened to, I don't know why they would listen, but they would listen and I really liked the way you talked about this song. So I went to listen to it and then they became like Rush fans. Yeah. Or there have been Rush fans and they were like some albums that they haven't really delved into, or maybe some songs that they didn't appreciate as much as Steve and I appreciated them. And so it's just, that's the best thing about doing the podcast, I think, is the other fans have been like, you really increased my appreciation for the band, which is exactly what you guys do.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Well, you'll be getting a lot of emails from me with dozens of questions.
Thank you for your time, Jerry. It was fantastic speaking with you.
Oh, thank you so much for asking me. It's great.